Maria had a secret. Despite raising two very different children in their cozy home in the city, she quietly owned a thriving company. Her older son, James, was sharp but ungrateful. He walked with a snobby air, pretending to live a life far richer and grander than he truly did. With sharp words and cold eyes, he often belittled Maria, treating her like a servant rather than a mother. Meanwhile, her younger daughter, Lily, was kind and devoted. She helped around the house, listened to her mother's stories, and always showed genuine love. But Maria wasn't ready to reveal her secret or name an heir just yet. Instead, she hired a small team to test James and Lily, a hidden challenge to see who could truly manage her company one day. The test wasn't about money or pride. It was about character, patience, and wisdom. One evening, Maria sat with her children. "You both will face challenges," she said softly, "but only one can lead what I have built." James scoffed. "I don't need tests. I'm already the best." Lily smiled nervously but stood tall. The days that followed were tough. The true test began not with ledgers or board meetings, but in the quiet of Maria's study, the very room where James had once fantasized about his executive future. Maria called them in together. "A company is more than its balance sheet," she began, her gaze resting on each of them. "It is a living entity built on decisions that affect real people. Your first task is here." She slid two identical files across the polished oak desk. Inside was a case study. A long-standing, loyal factory foreman, beloved by his team, had made a significant, costly error in a production order. The financial loss was substantial. The recommended action from the board was termination. "What do you do?" Maria asked, settling back. "You have 1 hour. I want your reasoning in writing." Lily retreated to the window nook, her brow furrowed in concentration. She thought of the man's family, his decades of service, the morale of his team. Her pen moved steadily, outlining a plan for retraining, a temporary probation, and a proposal to absorb the loss as a one-time investment in human capital. Her conclusion was firm but compassionate. Leadership is stewardship. We lose more in loyalty than we save in salary. James, at the desk, initially saw only the bottom line. Inefficiency could not be tolerated. Precedent was paramount. He wrote a crisp directive for termination with a standard severance package. Yet, as he reread the foreman's personnel file, notes on mentoring apprentices, perfect attendance, a community volunteer, his certainty wavered. In the final minutes, he scratched out his conclusion. His new submission was messier, less assured. He recommended a demotion and a mandatory management training course for the foreman, with the lost funds to be deducted from the department's bonus pool. Accountability must be balanced with context, he wrote, the words feeling foreign but right. Maria read their answers in silence. She offered no praise, no critique. "The second test," she said, "is practical." She gave them each a modest budget and a simple, vexing problem: the chronic lateness of deliveries from a key supplier to a flagship store. "Solve it," was her only instruction. Lily didn't go to the corporate office. She went to the store's loading dock at dawn, with coffee and pastries. She spent 2 days talking to the receiving staff, the truck drivers, and the store manager. She discovered the lateness wasn't malice, but a flawed routing schedule compounded by a citywide construction project. Her solution was a collaborative one. She negotiated with the supplier to adjust pickup times and worked with the store to slightly shift its stocking hours. The cost was minimal. The relationship strengthened. James, expecting to wield authority, arranged a tense meeting with the supplier's sales director. He demanded guarantees, threatened to review the contract. The director, defensive, promised compliance but left resentful. Unsatisfied, James followed Lily's unspoken example. He rented a car and personally traced the delivery route, hitting the same traffic snarls. His solution was more technical. He proposed a shared investment in a real-time GPS logistics app for the fleet. It was a portion of his budget, but it addressed the root cause for all future deliveries. Weeks of such tests followed: ethical dilemmas, interpersonal conflicts, crisis simulations. Lily's strength was her intuitive grasp of people and systems, her decisions rooted in sustainable harmony. James, humbled, began to shed his arrogance. His solutions grew less about wielding power and more about solving puzzles, his old cleverness finally being applied to something real. The The final evaluation came not in a report, but in Maria's summation. "Lily," she said, "you lead with your heart, but it is a heart guided by a formidable mind. You see the tapestry, not just the threads. You are ready to learn the whole." She then turned to James. "You began looking for a shortcut to a throne. You are now learning to build a road. The community outreach is not a consolation prize. It is where you will learn the weight of the name you wish to carry. Leadership is service. Earn the right to lead there, and the boardroom will follow." The tests had revealed their cores: Lily's innate, nurturing wisdom, and James's evolving potential. Maria's plan had worked. She hadn't just found a successor. She had forged one and had begun the careful, hopeful work of reshaping another. The true inheritance was not the company itself, but the character required to bear its weight. James struggled when faced with teamwork tasks, often barking orders and blaming others. Lily, despite her worries, listened patiently, helped where she could, and learned quickly from mistakes. The secret evaluators watched closely. Finally, Maria gathered them again. "James, your pride blinds you to others' strengths. Leadership is not about being the loudest." She then turned to Lily. "You showed kindness, resilience, and humility, qualities this company needs." Lily's eyes shimmered with tears of joy. "I will tell you both this," Maria said, her voice warm. "The biggest wealth isn't in money or status. It's in how we treat others. Lily, you are ready to inherit not just my company, but also my trust." James lowered his head, faced with truth, while Lily embraced her mother. Maria's test had chosen the heir, not by blood or bragging rights, but by heart. Continue with the story. The revelation settled over the cozy living room like a gentle, clarifying dawn. James, his face pale, stared at the worn rug beneath his feet, the grand illusions he'd built for himself crumbling into dust. Lily's embrace was tight around Maria, a silent promise woven into the quiet joy of the moment. In the weeks that followed, a subtle but profound shift took root in their home. Maria began to slowly, deliberately, pull back the curtain on her secret life. She showed Lily ledgers not of household expenses, but of quarterly profits. She discussed not grocery lists, but supply chain logistics over morning coffee. The cozy home became a gentle classroom, and Lily absorbed every lesson with the same quiet devotion she had always shown. James, meanwhile, retreated into a shell of sullen silence. The snobby air was gone, replaced by a raw, bewildered hurt. He watched as his mother and sister's conversations filled with terms he didn't understand, building a world from which he felt utterly excluded. One rainy afternoon, he found Maria in her favorite armchair, reviewing a contract. "Why?" The word was torn from him, more a plea than an accusation. "Why didn't you ever tell me? I would have been different." Maria set the papers aside and patted the sofa beside her. "Would you have James?" she asked, her voice soft but unwavering. "Or would the knowledge of wealth have only fed the pride that was already growing? I needed to see the man you were without it, because that is the man who would lead. A title doesn't change your character. It only amplifies what's already there." Her words, devoid of anger but full of a painful truth, hung in the air. For the first time, James didn't argue. He simply listened. Seeing his genuine struggle, Maria extended not the company, but an olive branch. "The test is over, James, but your life is not. The company has many divisions. There is a new community outreach initiative, building libraries in underserved neighborhoods. It requires passion, yes, but more importantly, it requires humility and a willingness to serve. It's yours if you want to earn it." It was a challenge far removed from the corner office fantasy he'd nurtured. It was work. Hard, unglamorous, human work. Swallowing his remaining pride, James nodded. As Lily stepped into her new role at the company's headquarters, a poised and attentive shadow to Maria, James began his own journey. He met with community leaders, his initial awkwardness slowly melting away as he listened to their stories. He hauled boxes of books, his designer clothes forgotten for simple t-shirts. He saw the spark in children's eyes, the same spark Max had in Emma's attic, and it stirred something long buried within him. One evening, the family gathered for dinner, a tradition that had grown strained but was now cautiously revived. James spoke not of imported luxuries, but of a little girl who had read her first chapter book in one of his new libraries. "She reminded me of Lily," he said, a faint, unguarded smile on his face. "So determined." Lily reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We can allocate more funds to that district's literacy program. I was reviewing the budget today." Maria watched the exchange, her heart full. Her secret was no longer a tool for testing, but a foundation for building. It had given Lily a purpose that fit her gentle strength and had given James a mirror, and then a path. Years later, at the grand opening of the flagship community center that bore the family's name, Maria stood between her children. Lily, now the confident CEO, spoke eloquently about sustainable growth and ethical leadership. James, the head of their thriving philanthropic foundation, spoke about potential and second chances. Maria's secret had been the seed. From it grew not a single heir, but a legacy. It taught them that the greatest puzzles aren't found in mystery novels, but in the human heart, and the most clever clue to a life well lived is understanding that true wealth is measured not in vaults, but in the kindness you plant and the bridges you build. The quiet passion of a mother had, indeed, led to the greatest adventure of all, a family, once divided, now united in purpose and love. The ribbon stretched taut between them, a shimmering scarlet line against the sun-drenched stone of the new community center. On one side stood Lily, her CEO's poise softened by the emotion of the day. On the other stood James, his posture no longer one of arrogant entitlement, but of grounded pride. Between them, Maria, her hands resting lightly on theirs, felt the vibration of the scissors not as an end, but as a beginning. The crowd erupted in applause, but for Maria, the truest sound was the quiet harmony between her children. The secret was now the story they told together, the bedrock of their public and private lives. In the years that followed, the Winthrop legacy, as the papers called it, became a blueprint for a new kind of family enterprise. Lily's boardroom was as likely to host a community organizer as a financier, and the company's annual reports featured metrics on literacy rates and small business grants alongside profit margins. James, with his hard-earned empathy, had an uncanny ability to identify needs before they became crises, his foundation weaving a safety net of opportunity across the city. Their partnership was the engine of it all. Where Lily saw structure, James saw spirit. Where James dreamed expansively, Lily built sustainably. They debated fiercely over dinner, their old dynamic transformed into a creative friction that sparked their best ideas. Maria, officially retired but perpetually consulted, was their most trusted advisor, the keeper of their origin story.